The Roman-Jewish War essentially ended with the destruction of the temple, which demonstrated the futility of the immediate messianic hopes of the Jews in the region. However, fighting continued for a few more years, either to the year 73 or possibly 74 of the Common Era. There were a few holdout fortresses of Jews outside of Jerusalem, and the most significant of those was undoubtedly Masada, which is shown here. It's a dramatic cliff-top fortress. It was actually the palace of Herod at one point, his vacation palace, and it's in a very forbidding part of the Judean desert, and it is essentially impregnable. The only way to really attack Masada is to climb its faces, which are quite steep, at least on two sides of it, and very, very difficult to actually breach its defenses. The rebels under Elazar ben Yair had actually laid in a tremendous amount of supplies, so they could actually last there for many years. Nevertheless, the Romans were brilliant and dogged engineers. They ended up climbing the mountain, and they built a siege tower that was about 80 meters or 260 feet high to be able to breach the final wall. When they got to the very last barrier, which was made of wood, and they set it on fire, the rebels located within the compound realized that there was no way they could keep the Roman soldiers out, and so in a very dramatic act, almost 1,000 rebels, and we're talking here about families, not just soldiers, but men, women, and children, committed mass suicide overnight rather than have themselves be turned over as slaves to the Romans. A very dramatic moment in Jewish history, a complex moment that has reverberations in modern Israeli ideology as well, and hopefully we'll come back to that when we get towards the end of the series. The Romans enacted significant punishment on the remaining population, and we will go into this in greater detail as we talk about the diaspora and moving forward. But for now, let's just look at a few examples of it. Symbolically, we see the institution of the Judea Capta coins. The Romans actually printed quite a few examples of this coin. On the left, they usually have a portrait of Vespasian. You can see him wearing the laurel wreath of victory around his head. And on the right, there is a Roman soldier standing by a balsam pine, which was one of the most important exports of Israel at the time. And there is a forlorn woman with her head in her hand, and she is representing the Judean people. So Judea Capta means Judea is taken captive. And this was a form of propaganda. You know, coins are like messages that circulate everywhere and people see them and it means something. It was a very important way of advertising state power. Just to show you a couple of examples of this Judea coin, sometimes the Roman soldier is portrayed as being, you know, way out of proportion large compared to the woman to show the dominance of Rome. And in some especially chilling cases, she's actually shown with her hands bound behind her back as a slave to be taken away into captivity. The Romans also celebrated this in Rome proper with the erection of the Arch of Titus. You see it here. And inside the arch, when we zoom in a little bit, there is a depiction of the Romans taking away spoils from the temple. Here's a better resolution look at it, and you can see that they're clearly holding the candelabra called the menorah, which would have stood in the Temple Mount area. A scholar at Yeshiva University did some chemical analysis of the sculpture and actually was able to reconstruct how it would have looked to the Romans in the ancient period, because they actually preferred their sculptures to be painted. So it would have looked like this to Romans. You can see on the left there's a sign that says Leges Judaeorum, or the law of the Jews. Perhaps that was referring to the tablets of the law, or maybe a Torah scroll. You can see they're clearly carrying the menorah. The sign next to it says Candelabrum Judaeorum, the Jewish candelabra. And on the right, they have the Sacra Judaeorum, the holy thing of the Jews, which appears to be the Shulchan with the altar with the badim, the staves that would be used to carry it, perhaps. The Romans also imposed some terrible taxes and some restrictions on Jewish activity, which I'd like to explore in a later lecture. But there is a saving moment in all of this. One thing that we have glossed over is the reaction of the Pharisees, in particular a rabbi named Yochanan ben Zakkai, who saw early on that the revolt against Rome was doomed to failure. And in a rather dramatic moment, he had himself smuggled out of Jerusalem to actually meet with Vespasian directly. This is one of the details that the Talmud offers. And he makes a request of Vespasian, actually 3 requests. But the one that's especially significant for us is he says to Vespasian, in Hebrew, we have the phrase, Ten li Yavne v'chachameha. Give me the city of Yavne, Yamnia in Greek, and its sages, which meant that he wanted to have a safe base where the pacifistic Pharisees could retreat and could continue to engage in religious study. This ultimately was the seed from which future Jewish leadership would grow, and the future of the Jewish people would be preserved through these scholars studying the traditional values and texts of Judaism. We will continue this in future lectures. Thank you very much for watching.